Let's do this! Starship launch just days away. Are you ready? The last of Starbase's second tower segments moved. Why so late? Final prep on Starship's heat shield. Is it really that important? And a surprising announcement regarding Starship's first publicly announced mission. My name is Felix, welcome to What About It. Let's dive right in. Starship updates. Excitement is in the air with SpaceX in full preparation mode for Starship's Flight Test 4, but that doesn't mean they are slowing down anywhere else. Want to know more about what to expect? Follow me. Welcome back to Starbase, the ever-growing, ever-evolving spaceport of the future, and all eyes are on Starship Flight number 4. SpaceX has been using the days before launch to prepare its vehicle for the challenges of flight and re-entry. To the untrained eye, it may seem like SpaceX hasn't done much work on Starship, but in reality it is quite the opposite. Regarding Flight 4 hardware, not much has changed on the surface, with the keyword here being surface. SpaceX is waiting for the most important and still missing ingredient as they prepare their vehicles for Flight Test number 4, a launch license. But what about the things we can already see? Are Ship 29 and Booster 11 ready for takeoff? Let's return to where we left off in the last episode to answer this question. D-stack. Yep, the prototypes were separated once again. Honestly, I was pretty excited to see this D-stack, but why would that be? After all, we need a full stack to fly, right? To answer this, let's look at a few reasons why SpaceX has to D-stack before a launch. First off, a fairly obvious item of business, tile work continues. Musk has said it many times in recent weeks. SpaceX wants to ensure that not a single heat tile goes flying on its own during ascent. But what's the big deal if they lose a couple of tiles anyway, right? SpaceX recently dropped the news that Starship isn't quite as durable as many would have thought, including me. In a tweet by Elon Musk, we discovered that a single missing Starship heat tile is just about all that's needed to decide between the ship surviving and an epic fireball of no return. He mentioned that Starship likely wouldn't survive if a single tile was missing, especially if it were around an important area such as the flaps or welds. And that thing has a lot of welds. Originally, we had guessed that Starship might be able to survive re-entry despite the loss of the occasional tile. We now know that this is rather unlikely, which means that Starship's tiles absolutely need to be as reliable as possible to avoid disaster. About the same as on a space shuttle. Ship 29's heat shield is the best so far. Improvements from Flight 1 to Flight 4 are obvious at first sight, which shows SpaceX's dedication and path to improve this biggest heat shield ever manufactured for a spacecraft. It'll stay very interesting during Flight 4. What do you think? Successful re-entry or fireball of doom? Let me know in the comments. So much for reason number 1, and on to the second reason why SpaceX had to destack Ship 29 from Booster 11. Explosives. Don't panic, these are actually good explosives. In fact, SpaceX wouldn't be allowed to launch without them. I'm of course talking about the FTS charges. Let me explain it for you and why it pertains to Starship's 4th flight. The term FTS is used in spaceflight to refer to a system known as a flight termination system. This is used to terminate, or in other words, blow up the rocket in case of a critical failure. A rocket spinning out of control poses quite a safety risk to anyone nearby. And a Starship, the biggest rocket ever built, is an even greater risk if uncontrolled. And we've seen Starship FTS charges being used before on both Flights 1 and 2. On IFT-1 it was used with mixed results to detonate the entire stack due to an uncontrollable spin that Starship had entered. On Flight 2, however, the FTS was only activated on the upper stage due to a propellant leak in the engine section which caused an onboard fire. On Flight 3, the FTS went unused and was deactivated before either of the vehicles broke up. Prior to Flight 2, all of the explosives were located together near the middle of each of the segments. This has now been changed in favor of installing them along the length of the rocket for maximum effect. So why did SpaceX need to destack the Starship for this? Couldn't they just build the system in right from the start? Explosives are dangerous, so they aren't just left on the rocket when they aren't needed. SpaceX waits until they are positive that the rocket is going to remain at the pad. Then they begin loading the explosives onto the craft ahead of and very close to launch. This minimizes the amount of time that the FTS has to sit unattended in the vehicle. Pretty simple. So when will the FTS charges be installed inside the rocket? Well, our on-site photographer John recently spotted the installation of these charges onto Flight 4 hardware. This is practically the last step in preparing the rocket ahead of its upcoming launch, which means we're incredibly close to seeing Starship take to the skies once again. 2 reasons, that's it, and did they get it done? Yep, on the 31st we knew SpaceX had completed their work on the vehicles for this round as the Mechazilla chopsticks moved into position. We all held our breath waiting for the next stack of the world's most advanced rocket, and nothing. So a third reason maybe? Nope. It likely only had something to do with the wind. That night was well above what anyone should be lifting rockets in, especially when that rocket happens to be as large as Starship. Thankfully, the winds died down and on the very next day, stacking commenced. Ship 29 was still being held by the chopsticks anyway, so it was just hoisted into the air before being gently set down atop Booster 11. So that's it then, they can launch. Hold your Raptors, not so fast. Just because the vehicles are ready for liftoff doesn't mean that the regulatory side of things is set in stone yet, but this is beginning to change. Currently, the launch has been set back by a single day to the 6th of June. This is likely because SpaceX doesn't expect to have all the necessary licenses and restrictions by the 5th. But they could have them by the 6th. I have a treat for you, one more sign that the launch is right around the corner. But first, I have an important update regarding Y plans for Flight 4, the after party I told you about in the past few episodes. Sold out thanks to so many who want to party with us. I'll be driving down to Starbase. In fact, I left Florida 2 hours after I recorded this episode, so I was driving to Starbase. You get the idea. We've partnered with MyRadar and they went all in. We're traveling in style with their one-of-a-kind MyRadar Cybertruck. Follow us on social media and keep a lookout at Starbase. Y is coming to town. Want to help us with all this? We've looked into our channel metrics and there are over 2 million returning monthly viewers who have not subscribed yet. Help us improve the channel even further by double checking that you've hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our updates. While you're at it, give us a like and become a Y supporter for exclusive SpaceX updates. With it, you get access to daily Starbase photo galleries, including satellite, aerial and ground photos of SpaceX's progress and countless other extras on top. And no matter how much you decide to give, everyone gets the same supporter content and access. You decide what you want to give. And to give something back, we've decided to give 20% off on everything in our US merch store until the current launch date of Flight 4. June 6th. This includes our brand new Flight 4 shirts. Dig in, it's on us, a link is in the description. And now for that very important piece of info about the launch date. We finally have the NOTMAR, or Notice to Mariners, for launch. This is a warning to all marine vehicles that an area might be unsafe. In this case, it is unsafe because a rocket might land on you. And no matter how close I want to get to that rocket, that doesn't sound like fun. This notice is yet another crucial step towards Flight Test 4. With this out of the way, all that's left is the flight restriction and, of course, the launch license. SpaceX typically receives it just days before the launch. In fact, they might have already received it by the time this video comes out. We are on the edge of our seats with excitement. This flight is going to be extremely important for SpaceX, even taking hardware-rich development into account. At some point, Starships will need to fly reliably. But even with all the flight preparations going on, SpaceX still finds time to keep working on infrastructure at Starbase. It never stops. This is the already iconic Gateway to Mars sign that was recently constructed at the launch site. After slowly being eaten away to make room for the second tower, teams have finally begun dismantling the sign itself. After a mere 6 months of being up, it is being taken down in favor of Orbital Launch and Integration Tower 2. There is speculation that the sign will be relocated to a new location, and we can already see SpaceX workers handling it with some care, but if this is true, it's likely not on the priority list for now. Another demolition project that requires our attention is the ground support equipment tanks that SpaceX is in the process of removing. Despite an imminent launch, SpaceX continues to remove the perlite insulation from these massive tanks. These guys just don't quit. We have seen hundreds of backhaul trucks going back and forth as they remove the perlite. Despite SpaceX removing all this perlite, that doesn't mean these tanks will be removed anytime soon. It will likely happen after Flight 4. The old tank farm plumbing also continues to be removed and will likely be completely gone in a few weeks. In no time at all, the entire old tank farm will likely disappear, leaving nothing in its place. That is nothing except for free space and a clear view. It is very possible that this freed up space will be used for more tank farm equipment, such as new horizontal bullet tanks in the future. Time will tell. What we can be certain of is that you should listen to this. Better safe than sorry. Ever had your online game abruptly cut out? It is frustrating but preventable. Discover how with our sponsor Surfshark VPN. Initially, I believed game disconnections were typical. However, reading Akamai's 2022 report, Gaming Respawned, shocked me. It revealed that 37% of attacks targeting websites, servers and more are directed at the gaming industry. Hence, these interruptions might be deliberate attempts to spoil my day. So I armor up with Surfshark VPN, the sponsor of this video, with a few easy clicks. I activate it, switch my virtual location, and I'm set for work or play. It allows me to conceal my IP address, shielding me from attacks by rivals and trolls for seamless gaming. But wait, there is more! Surfshark offers numerous other security features, making it a must-have all-in-one solution. While I'm gaming, its antivirus scans and removes threats in the background. Surfshark also offers an alternative email to keep my personal information hidden. Registering or subscribing under my Surfshark email keeps my personal account spam-free and minimizes potential data leaks. I can game and work without worry thanks to Surfshark's alerts that notify me instantly if my personal information gets leaked online. Try Surfshark yourself and enjoy 30-day money-back guarantee for peace of mind. Secure your gameplay with Surfshark. Enter coupon code FELIX for an extra 4 months free at surfshark.deal/Felix. Surfshark, surf with your own set of rules. All safe and protected, let's keep going. We talked about things being torn down, now let's talk about things being built up. I am of course talking about the new tower that is slowly being constructed at Starbase. As you probably already know, we recently saw the beginning of construction with the installation of large piles. These piles are meant to stabilize the tower's foundation and prevent it from sinking into Starbase's sand and mud. And SpaceX is placing a lot more of them compared to the first tower. OLED 1 had 19 piles under it. OLED 2 at Starbase has 134 of them. SpaceX wants to make very sure that this one stands on an extremely stable foundation. We also saw deliveries of tower segments to Starbase in recent days. The tower segments will obviously come into play later on, but it is important to have them close by, especially with SpaceX's rapid pace of progress. As we've mentioned in recent videos, there are still 2 tower sections here in Florida at the location where they were built, Roberts Road. They've been situated there for quite some time, despite SpaceX having moved every other segment to Starbase already. But they are about to move. Recently, one of the remaining tower sections was spotted leaving Roberts Road and heading to the turn basin next to NASA's iconic vehicle assembly building for transportation. The tower was joined on its journey by the chopstick carriage. This piece is where the chopsticks mount, and it is responsible for scaling the tower, thus lifting the chopsticks along with it. Their trip will likely last a couple of days as they float to Starbase. Then they'll be offloaded at the port of Brownsville before being rolled to the Starbase Sanchez site. Oddly, these will be the final 2 segments to be transported to Starbase, despite being number 4 and 5 in the stack. Were you wondering why they left them in Florida for so long? Good to have you here today. The reason is pretty simple once you know there is something different about them. These 2 tower segments house an important component called the Ship QD or Quick Disconnect Arm. This arm supplies the ship with propellant and power before liftoff. Very important. As you can see here, the arm swings in and out, making these sections much more complex. It is the Starship's equivalent to the arms on the famous mobile launch platform from the Apollo era. They were used for much the same purpose and functioned identically. When Starship flies from this new tower, it will likely make for an even more beautiful sight to see all these systems work in a perfect play. Another fascinating and beautiful sight is the constant development of facilities surrounding the build site. One that is particularly interesting to us is the brand new office building under construction next to the Star Factory. This structure has grown quite rapidly in recent days. Now, I know that to most people an office building is probably one of the least interesting things that can be thought of. Except here at Starbase, things are different. This building is likely where engineers will work to design the future of Starship. Everything from making blueprints to designing software. The ideas and solutions found in this building could revolutionize the space industry and help pave the way for a new chapter in humanity's history. So what appears to be a boring office building from the outside will likely be the birthplace of many revolutionary ideas and concepts. And the office is growing, with what appears to be the final structural components being placed. All that is left are the walls and the interior. I can't wait to see what kind of ideas come out of there. Leaving Star Factory and heading down the road to Massey's test site, we can see there is a new resident. Test tank B14.1 has arrived. Here it will undergo an initial series of structural tests. The purpose of these small-scale test tanks like B14.1 is to verify new design or manufacturing methods before building a full prototype with those methods. SpaceX is already looking ahead into the future while getting the largest rocket ever built onto the pad for the 4th time. Flight Test 4's launch is just days away now, and assuming it all goes to schedule, this will be the last episode before the launch. We'll be streaming the event live from Starbase, set your reminders. Will you be watching this live? Are you excited? Let me know down below. But what's to come after all those test flights? What will Starship be used for? One possible mission for a few years now has been Dear Moon, the first ever private flyby of the moon. This program likely needs very little introduction to anyone who has followed Starship for any amount of time. Back in 2018, Elon Musk gave one of the first proper Starship annual update talks, which has now become a bit of a tradition. At the time, Starship was still being referred to as BFR, or Big Falcon rocket, and it was still supposed to be made from carbon fiber instead of the now iconic stainless steel. A lot has changed since then, and during that update, along with all the amazing new technical details, there was also a huge announcement.
That's where I'd like to introduce the first paying customer of BFR. So, let's see. Would Yusaku Miyazawa please come forward?
Starship had its first publicly announced passenger, Yusaku Maezawa, or MZ, who announced it wouldn't just be a normal flight. It would be a flight around the moon Apollo 8 style. He also announced that it wouldn't just be him on board. He bought a whole Starship, right? Why not bring people, artists in space? The idea was simple, for them to share their experience with the world during the journey. This project was called Dear Moon, truly inspiring. Eventually the artists were announced, with one of them even being fellow space YouTuber Tim Dodd, better known as the Everyday Astronaut. And the other inspiring part at the time was the timeline. SpaceX planned to launch Dear Moon as early as 2023, just 5 years after the announcement. Excitement was growing, but as we all know, 2023 came and passed without a Starship launching to the moon. Of course, with a cutting-edge aerospace program like Starship, delays aren't just expected, they are the norm. Someone must have grown impatient. On June 1st, it was announced that Dear Moon was cancelled. The reason? Delays in Starship development. At least that's the publicly available reason. There had been rumors over the past month after Elon Musk unfollowed Maezawa on X. Seeing this project being cancelled is confusing, to say the least. Booking a future Starship flight around the moon and then not being okay with delays doesn't seem to fit very well. But if delays like this are so common, wouldn't Maezawa have known 2023 was optimistic at best? At Starship's current development speed, it could be many more years before Dear Moon could have even gotten close to happening safely. After all, Dear Moon isn't even planning on being the first crewed Starship launch. That will be on Jared Isaacman's third Polaris Dawn mission, which is also likely a couple of years away. Frankly, all this seems to have been built on the wrong person. Not being okay with waiting longer than 5 years for something like this feels like an impatient and quick decision-making process on Maezawa's side. To be fair, as fast as Starship development is, it still is technically behind schedule, and even if some of us rocket enthusiasts are okay with that, not everyone is. Dear Moon isn't over though. Starship might just get to the point where it is safe, cheap, and readily available. Once that moment comes, there might be people interested in funding similar missions. Here's to the moon. That's it for today. Remember to smash that like button, subscribe for more awesome content. That is what fuels the algorithm and it helps us immensely. Remember the 20% off everything in your favorite Space Nerd store until June 6th. The link is in the description. And if you want to train your space IQ even further, watch this video next to continue your journey. Thank you very much for watching and I'll see you again in the next episode. Epic fireball of no return. And that was my phone. On the... Yep. Ha! Isn't it beautiful?